Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Awaken series, part 7, Safeguarding the Consciousness of Our Children from Toxic Energies. Last week, after the unusual series that we had last week, the unusual talk that we had last week, where JadeFire asked me to read out what he had made me write. And then, of course, midway took over the session and channeled through himself. I think he got a little impatient. I really thought, and I actually mentioned that to my husband later, that maybe this is the end of the series. And so JadeFire came in to kind of round off the series himself. But it evidently wasn't. And so here we are with part 7. So the first thing I asked JadeFire is, I understand the importance of this subject, but I wanted him to tell me very clearly why he wanted this to be today's talk. And his answer quite surprised me, because his answer was, we want this talk today in order to save your world. The future of your world does not depend upon you and your generation as much as it depends upon the children and the youngsters of this world. The role that your generation has to play, the role that your generation has to play, the role that generations older than yours have to play is, one, to stop forcing the children to consume these toxins, to stop them from consuming these toxins by eliminating them yourself. The role that we have to play is therefore to recognize these toxins in ourselves as adults, and to truly, with every fiber of our being, to stop making excuses of, I can't do this and I can't do that and this is very difficult, and to step out of these petty excuses to think of our world as a whole and to do everything that we can to eliminate the toxins from within us. And I recognize the truth of this statement because I have heard myself making this excuse sometimes. This is so difficult. This is something that I'm not able to do. And, just recognizing that we're not able to do that is not enough. It is important, yes, that we recognize that there are certain things that are challenging for us, certain shifts, certain changes that are challenging for us. But just recognizing that is not enough. We have to move beyond just that recognition. We have to do everything that we possibly can to make that shift. Because, just saying, I recognize that this is difficult for me is actually, JF made me realize, is actually just a cop out. It's difficult and it's challenging because you don't really want to make that change. So, yes, I've recognized that in myself, and that is the one toxin I am most definitely going to work upon even more strongly and with even more resolve and with even more determination than I have so far. So JadeFire starts today's talk by explaining that though we will talk of many different toxins, all these other toxins are only branches of the one main root, the one core toxin, the most venomous, the most virulent, the most potent. And this toxin is the toxin of self-absorption. And he goes on to say that when a child is born, the child's soul dwells in oneness. The child's soul thrives in abundance. The child's soul is connected to every part of living energy, whether it is manifest on earth or not. But the adults around the child, along with the milk that the child is fed, along with the nutrients that the child is given, the child is also fed upon separation and scarcity. And this separation and scarcity only comes from self-absorption. Now, you might say that I am not a self-absorbed person. I think of others, I work for others, I do things for others, I put myself out for others. So this does not apply to me. You may be right, but JadeFire does not agree. And he asks three pertinent questions. Well, there are actually three scenarios. And he asked me to answer these very honestly, and he asks you to answer these very honestly. And the first one, when there is a disaster, or when you hear of an accident, when you hear of a calamity, and your loved ones are in that area, in that vicinity, your first thought and your first prayer is for their safety, is for their wellness, for their well-being. And you pray as hard as you can to ensure that they remain safe. Is this not true? He goes on to the next question, the next scenario. And he said, during this period of COVID, many have let go of their staff, domestic staff as well as office staff. And there are many who have let go of their staff, even though they found this to be unpleasant to them. They did not do this out of greed. They believed that they did it out of necessity. But they viewed this situation from an extremely limited focus of the scarcity mindset. They did not do what JadeFire taught us a few talks ago. They did not hold, they did not create a space of possibilities. If they had done so, if they had held and created a space of possibilities, instead of focusing upon the scarcity reality of, I don't have the money to pay the staff, or I'm finding this difficult because if I pay the staff, there's nothing left for my family and myself, they would have actually begun to envision for themselves possibilities that would have arisen from the abundance mindset and which would have therefore given them various directions in which they could have created abundance for themselves and for the others. And he asks, is this not true? And then the third one. How many parents would say that they are not concerned, that they are not worried about their children's education, about their children's future? Even when the children become adults, parents are still concerned because we're concerned they are our children. But he says, do you not recognize this as self-absorption? And frankly, I said, no, I don't. I don't recognize my concern for my children, my worry for my children as self-absorption. And he said, let me explain. Underlying your worry, underlying your concern for your children, yes, of course, there is love for them. But there is also concern for your own happiness. Your children's future and your children's happiness would make you happy, would make you feel good. Is this not self-absorption? Because if this were not self-absorption, your concern for the education and future and happiness would not have been restricted to your children. It would be a concern that you had for children. As soon as you place that word, my children, you open the Pandora's box of self-absorption. And he asks again, are any one of these three situations incorrect? Do they not universally apply to all? And if they apply to all, then it means that this toxin of self-absorption is a universal toxin. And then he goes on to give me a fourth situation, and he speaks about charity. And actually, JadeFire said, this is something that we would like to speak about most emphatically, especially now in this moment in time. A lot of people, JadeFire said, a lot of people are doing extremely valuable work where they are going above and beyond themselves in order to be there for others. And he says that is true altruism, where they have left behind the comforts of their homes, they have left behind the safety of their environment, they have moved beyond themselves to look after and take care of the needs of others. And he says, this is the shift that we are looking forward to in all, not only in a few. The shift from charity to altruism. And he says it is easy to be charitable. In fact, charity is a very significant sign of self-absorption. Because JadeFire points out, look closely at those who are charitable and not altruistic. The money that they give, they want to be recognized for it. The help that they render, they want to be acknowledged for it. The possessions that they part with, they want others to know of it. Charity is done for the purpose of furthering self-absorption. Altruism is when you care not whether someone knows or does not know, whether they recognize or do not recognize, whether your picture is pasted all over social media or not. Altruism is an act of giving of yourself. Of, yes, enduring a few hardships, taking on a few risks. But in these hardships and in these risks, there is a recognition that just as I am important, just as my life is important, the lives of others are equally important. And he says one of the most joyous transformations in your world during this period of COVID has been this. A very, very large, very, very significant number of people have grown into altruism. But there was regret in JadeFire as well. And the regret was that COVID had given us a very brief respite. And as soon as it gave us respite, the altruism almost entirely ended. It did not persevere, it did not continue. The thought of others did not continue because now your own work took precedence, your own existence took precedence, your own life took precedence. And once again, you began to think of yourself alone and not the others. And that is why JadeFire says, and that is why a fresh surge of the COVID is necessary. It is necessary because the changes and the transformations that had resulted from this amazing period of renewal and reflection have begun to lose their intensity. But he explains, remember always, what we refer to is a potential future. You still have the power in your hands. You can still bring about the changes without the suffering. Our world is at a very, very critical juncture. Very critical. The next few months shall be significant. You and I have to decide on where we would like to take our world. Not our families, not ourselves, our world. Where would we like to take that? One road ahead of us is the road of oneness and abundance and change and shift. And the other road has many, many sharp and pointed rocks. You and I have to make that call. At this very moment in time, our world stands at this juncture. What shall happen in the weeks to come shall determine the road that all of us as a collective have decided to take. And let us not make that excuse, what can I do? Because you can do everything. You have the power of one. And in that power of one lies the power of oneness. And you can tap into that power of oneness and make a choice for the human collective. Because when you make a choice for the human collective, you make that choice not for yourself, you make the choice for the one energy that is us. So self-absorption is not only about vanity. It's not only about the ego. It's not only about selfishness. Even when we are concerned and worried for ourselves and for our families, JadeFire says, look at the bigger picture. That also comes from self-absorption. When you are anxious, when you are depressed, when you are filled with fear, look at the bigger picture. It comes from self-absorption. It is time for us to widen very, very significantly our concept of self-absorption, so that we do not kid ourselves into believing that we are not self-absorbed. Yes, let us not lose focus of the times when we are altruistic, when we are there for others, when we are rising above and beyond our limited selves. Let's not lose sight of those. And let us happily recognize that strength of oneness that we show in those moments. But also let us not lose sight of the fact that there are many, many, many moments when we are self-absorbed. Because if we lose sight of that, we shall be unable to widen our understanding of self-absorption, and we shall remain in this very, very potent toxin. And children are looking at the adults. They are watching their families. They are hearing what the adults are saying. And unknown to you and I, we are feeding our children the toxin of self-absorption. We tell them, take care of your family. Be careful with your possessions. Pray for your friends and your teachers and your family members. Be mindful of those whom you call friend. All of these seem like such positive teachings. But now it is time for us to modify these teachings. Take care of this world that is your family. Be mindful of and respect the possessions that belong to all, because they are here to be shared by all. Pray for the health and happiness of this world that is your family. We have to change the teachings. And I am a firm believer that when we teach, we learn. So let's teach that to our children, whether they are old or young. Let us teach them the value of life itself. And let us teach them that life does not limit itself to themselves and their families and their friends and those whom they like, but that life exists in everything. Life exists even in forms that they may not like, in forms that they may find ugly. but we have to teach them to value life, to look beyond the form, to look beyond the action, and to respect and value life. When they don't do that, when they continue to live with this toxin that their parents, their teachers, their adults, their world around them has fed them with, they grow up and they wonder, why are our lives so empty? Why are my relationships not working? Why am I facing struggle? The answer lies in this. When your morning cup of tea or coffee is mixed with a healthy dose of self-absorption, the rest of your day shall proceed in exactly that vein. We have to ensure that when our children wake up and have their breakfast, into their milk, into their tea, coffee, cereal bowl, they mix the sweetness of life that exists in the world, which is their family. Keep using those words again and again and again. The world is your family. Mom, dad, grandparents, siblings are not your family. They are only a very, very, very small part of your family. Each time you go out and there are people on the streets, the strangers, the homeless, point them out and say, here is your family. What would you like to do to help? And never, never stop them from helping in any way they might choose to. Encourage them. Because if you are stopping them, it's because of your scarcity mindset. It's because of your separation that you live in. And then he moves on to the second toxin, and that is the toxin of gossip. And he questions, he says, why do you all have so much time to discuss people? Why do you all have so much time to discuss people, but so little time to discuss oneness, togetherness, abundance, a positive collective consciousness and growth? Why do you have so little time to discuss this? Why do people's actions and their misfortunes enchant you? Why are you not thrilled? Why are you not as thrilled by the opportunities that we are being presented? The opportunities of oneness and togetherness and sharing and growth. When children hear their parents gossiping, they learn that it is okay. And so, along with 1 cupful of self-absorption is added 1 tablespoon of gossip. And JadeFire asks us all to listen very carefully when our children talk. What are their conversations like? To each other, to us, to other people? What are their conversations like? Are they constantly discussing people? And here he pauses and says, remember, when you discuss a politician or a celebrity or a police officer, that is also gossip. So what are our children talking about? Are their conversations shallow? Are they ever talking about growth, about unity, about the wellness and well-being of others? Are they asking questions about what they can do to make the world a better place? Or are their conversations only centered around their money, their girlfriends, their boyfriends, their friends, their relationships, their enemies, their success, their failures? Is it all about them? Because if it is, instead of changing their conversation, let us first change ours. Tell them nothing, but change your conversation. And they will hear, and they will copy, and they will follow. The third toxin that JadeFire talks about is the toxin of why me? Why did this happen to me? Whether the child falls sick or has an accident or experiences failure or lack of success, and the child asks you, but why did it happen to me? Instantly recognize that your child has somewhere, somehow consumed the toxin of why me? And ask yourself, from where did this toxin come? Did I, in some way, knowingly or unknowingly, give that toxin to my child? Is this toxin present in the home? And then JadeFire goes on to say something that was quite amazing for me to hear. And he says the words, why me, are spoken so often that everyone can hear them. What is often not spoken, but is even louder than the words, why me, is that hidden subtext. Why me and why not the other person who so deserves to get this punishment? And he says sometimes this is not even a silent subtext. Sometimes it's spoken loud and strong and clear. Why me? Why not that evil man, that immoral woman? They deserve it. I don't. And so this toxin of persecution and this toxin of victimization silently enters into our lives. And not only does it poison us, but it creates an even greater gulf of separation. And JadeFire says all the toxins of envy, of manipulation, of arrogance, of judgment, they all come from self-absorption. Your children are listening. Your children are watching. However old your children are, however young your children are, they are constantly listening to you. They are constantly watching you. They are constantly following your example. And when they have so much of everything, there creeps in yet another toxin, and that is the toxin of waste. If a phone has a slight flaw, let's chuck it and buy a new one. If clothes need a little bit of darning, why bother? Let's buy something new. In fact, let's buy something new, even if the clothes are fine, even if that telephone is fine, even if the car is working absolutely well. Let's just get something new, something more. The child has 3 toys, but you buy him 6 more. Why? Because it's his birthday. Because it's Christmas, it's Diwali. As adults, we have lost the opportunity that Christmas and birthday and Diwali gave us to teach them to value. Of course, give them something new, something they will be happy with. But instead of 6, could you give 1 to the child and then make the child experience the joy of giving 5 to 5 others? Instead of taking the child to a movie, what about taking the child to an animal welfare center and playing with those animals, feeding them, taking them for a walk? What about taking the child to an orphanage and playing with those lonely, lonely children? What about a visit to an old age home where the elderly are yearning to meet their grandchildren? Those 6 toys that you have given your child, the child will not even play with them. There is fascination for the first few minutes, and then it goes into a toy basket and collects dust. And then the next time there's house cleaning, the mother throws it all out and gives it as charity. And in 1 year, we lost at least 3 opportunities. In fact, we took those 3 opportunities and turned them into greater self-absorption, into greater disrespect, into greater separation. JadeFire says, every gift has to be forwarded. Whatever you receive as a gift, pass it forward. Whether that gift is the gift of wisdom, that gift is the gift of caring, of love, whether it's a possession or not, pass it forward. If you have learned something today, you must teach someone tomorrow. If someone gave you a hug which made you feel cared for, which made you feel comforted and soothed, pass that hug on to someone else who needs it as well. Because if you don't, that gift that you have received will turn into the toxin of self-absorption. And this is exactly what we do not teach our children. How can we then safeguard them from toxins? We do not teach them to pass it forward. In fact, we teach them to feel privileged, to feel entitled, to look at that little homeless boy who is eyeing that ice cream cone in your hand and to turn away and say, go and look for your food somewhere else. Don't look at my ice cream cone. Because you believe that that little homeless boy is going to curse you in some way. And when our children do something wrong, when they dare to be different, when they actually rebel against your upbringing, and they dare to be different, we pin them down and we force feed them the toxin of shame. How dare you make a mistake? How dare you dare to be different? How dare you disagree with me? I'm an adult. And these children grow up with shame. Shame that takes over every part of their being. And when there is shame, you cannot connect with your inner being. You cannot connect with your God self. And when you cannot connect with your God self, you cannot connect with another. And when you cannot connect with another, there can be no oneness. And we do this by ensuring that our children live in shame because they have not been perfect, because they have not attained what someone else has attained, because their actions, their words, their preferences make us feel we have failed. And there you have it, we come back to self-absorption. So not only do we feed them the toxin of shame, we feed them the toxin of perfection, where we force them to believe And this is an irony, and I loved this irony that JadeFire brought out. We force them to believe that only number one is important. But JadeFire asks, which number one? What is really number one? Do the parents know that? Yes, one is important. Always be number one. If the world is number 1 and 2 and 3 and million and 10 million and 100 million, then you've lost the importance of number one. And in our ignorance, we force our children to believe that perfection and success is what is of prime importance. We force them to believe that that is what shall make them happy. And when it doesn't, when they get the fame and they get the fortune, but they are depressed and suicidal, we wonder why. Where did we go wrong? And this is a question we all have to ask. Where did we go wrong? Where did we, our generation, go wrong? Where did the generation older than us, where did we all go wrong? And how did we go so wrong and go on for so long without realizing how wrong we are? So in this week, look at your children very well, old or young. Look at them not in judgment. Just look at them to recognize the toxins they have consumed. Look at them to recognize their spiritual stuntedness. And when you recognize the toxins they have consumed, ask yourself, where did these toxins come from? Because the child's soul dwells in oneness and abundance. The child could not have taken these toxins on its own. The child was given these toxins. And given these toxins again and again and again till it became part of the daily diet. So we have to ask ourselves, where did these toxins come from? From me? From the home? Before we can eliminate the toxins in our children, before we can safeguard them from the toxins, we have to eliminate the toxins in ourselves. And JadeFire says, for this reason, so that you can save your world. For the next 3 weeks, the Awaken series, which means Awaken series part 8, 9, and 10, will focus entirely on elimination of toxins within us. And JadeFire has said that not only will we speak on it on a spiritual, energetic level, but on a very, very, very practical level, where we shall guide you in very practical ways on how to eliminate the toxins. And he ends with these words, which I would like to read out to you. For what is the purpose of these talks if the toxins within you are not eliminated? We shall guide you, and you shall guide your children. Only then do your children have a chance. Their soul blueprints show purposes that are universally oriented. But when adults have fed them separation, scarcity, and self-absorption, these universal blueprint purposes have little or no opportunity to flourish. When the children have been anchored in a culture of judgment and a heritage of greed and competition, instead of being grounded in cooperation, in oneness, in unity, and in togetherness, the God self has no place in their lives. And when oneness, cooperation, and abundance disappear from the lives of your children, the future disappears from your earth. The world today has one very clear message: change or vanish. Transform or disintegrate. This change lies in the hands of your children. But unfortunately, those hands are controlled by the hearts and minds of their adults. And many of these children, in spite of the toxins they have been fed, shall still go on to fulfill partially, if not wholly, their soul blueprint purpose. But before they can do that, they shall suffer the consequence of these toxins just as you have. Do you wish this upon your children? Would you rather not, that they attain their divine blueprint purposes in joy, in happiness, with ease, without struggle? You have come to this moment of awakening because you suffered, because you struggled. Is this your legacy to your child? You have undertaken to safeguard them from everything. But recognize that today the day has come when you have to safeguard them from yourself. Thank you.